I bet you've heard about the Boeing Starliner. In this video, I'll catch you up on all the twists and turns in this saga and discuss the possibilities for how the story unfolds from here. Why are the astronauts stuck? Why can't Boeing fix the Starliner? When and how are Butch and Suni going to come home? Let's get started. 4.5 years after its first test flight, the Starliner crewed flight test launched June 5th, 2024.
Yeah! Oh, man!
At long last, the monkeys seemed to be off Boeing's back. But the good times didn't last. Starliner had further delays than actually docking to the ISS. 5 of the maneuvering thrusters were disabled by the software because their performance was outside the expected range. After troubleshooting, 4 of these were re-enabled, and Butch Wilmore was able to get the capsule in position to dock. The crew of this Starliner, named Calypso, is Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams. They are both Navy test pilots who have been NASA astronauts for more than 20 years. Each has flown to the ISS on the Space Shuttle, the Russian Soyuz, and now Starliner. They are the ideal crew for a test flight, especially this one. Many spaceflight enthusiasts argued with the perception that Starliner is stuck in space. Butch and Suni aren't in danger. They are helping with the ISS operations, and for astronauts, time and space is why they signed up. So the astronauts are not suffering at all.
Butch and Suni are not stranded in space. Our plan is to return them on Starliner, but they're safe on space station. Their spacecraft is working well, and they're enjoying their time on the space station.
Hey, do Butch and Suni look stuck to you? They look like they're having a great time.
We've been doing science for them, maintenance, some major maintenance that has been waiting for a little while. I'll just reiterate again, this is a test flight. We were expecting to find some things, and so we are finding stuff, and we're correcting it and making changes, making updates.
This is the world of test. This is a tough business that we're in. Human spaceflight is not easy in any regime. And there have been multiple issues with every spacecraft that's ever been designed, and that's the nature of what we do. You know, that mantra you've heard, failure is not an option. That's why we are staying here now. We did have some degradation in our thrusters, and we know that, and that's why we're staying, because we're going to test it. That's what we do. That's what we do in this business. We're going to get the data that we need to help inform our decisions so we make the right decisions, and that's why we feel confident. We've got a history of doing that going back decades in human spaceflight, and that gives us confidence now that it will continue. We are very close and friends with those that are making these decisions, and we trust them. We trust their integrity. We trust their technical acumen, and we trust that the tests that we're doing are the ones that we need to do to get the right answers, to give us the data that we need to come back.
But even though NASA has cleared Starliner to bring them home in case of emergency, it has not approved any other case. So like the proverbial cat in the tree, Starliner is stuck until jumping looks better than staying put. Recently, NASA revealed that Starliner lacked the software to autonomously undock and return home without astronauts. This is odd, since Starliner already did this on its second test flight in 2022. So the obvious and glaring question is, why can't Starliner do what it successfully achieved 2 years ago? Speaking of flight control software, that's been a recurring theme in the Starliner saga. The first test flight didn't reach the ISS because the software fired the thrusters too soon for too long, wasting the fuel it needed to get to the ISS.
But for months, the Times was reporting there was something wrong with the 737 MAX itself. The software system that pilots had not known existed.
The Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, or MCAS. The function of this previously undisclosed system was to save the plane when it believed that the plane might go into a stall and fall out of the sky.
After 2 fatal crashes, a Boeing 737 MAX airplane killed 346 people in less than 6 months. The FAA put out a statement that the plane was airworthy, but after public pressure, grounded Boeing for nearly 2 years. The cause of the 737 MAX crashes was found to be in the MCAS flight control software, which in some circumstances caused the plane to suddenly plummet toward the ground, leaving pilots struggling to counteract the dive. This cost Boeing $20 billion in fines, compensation, and legal fees. At one time, Boeing was American aerospace royalty. It designed and built the massive Saturn V booster that took the first humans to the moon. Boeing built the lunar rover along with General Motors. The company was a key NASA contractor for the Space Shuttle system and is still a big player in the Space Launch System, or SLS. SLS, like Starliner, is delayed and well over its budget, and now questions are being asked about Boeing's production of that vehicle as well. Boeing's building the core stage or booster for SLS. That involves making tanks that hold the liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen fuels and all the plumbing needed to feed the RS-25 engines, which Boeing does not build, that are recycled from the Space Shuttle program. While all of this is rocket science to some extent, the SLS core stage is basically the same as the Saturn V booster, which Boeing built in the 1960s. The idea that Boeing has trouble making quality welded tanks in 2024, nearly 60 years after Apollo, should be shameful to them. Let's look at the full Starliner timeline briefly. To provide redundant access to the ISS, NASA picked two spacecraft, Boeing Starliner and SpaceX's Crew Dragon. Crew Dragon first took astronauts to the ISS in May 2020 and is preparing to launch its 13th mission once Starliner completes its current mission. Boeing planned to send astronauts into space on Starliner by 2017, but developmental delays are normal and expected for new space projects. After the first uncrewed test flight failed,
I want to start by just making sure everybody knows that today a lot of things went right.
Okay, Jim, way to find the positive. This flight test happened while the 737 MAX was grounded, so you can understand the defensiveness. Boeing had to redo the test, which was later delayed due to valve issues, until May 2022. The sticky valves in question are made by Aerojet Rocketdyne. This company also figures into the current thruster issues, so stay tuned. The second uncrewed test flight went well overall, and plans were begun for a crewed test flight the following year, until further testing revealed the parachute harnesses did not meet NASA requirements, and, inexplicably, the electrical wires in the capsule were held down with tape that could catch fire. These issues were resolved for the current mission, but before the launch could take place, Boeing was involved in a lawsuit. This time they weren't the target, between Aerojet Rocketdyne and a company called ValveTech. ValveTech won its suit, and Aerojet Rocketdyne, the Starliner valve supplier, was forced to pay $850,000. Even more interesting than the lawsuit was ValveTech's CEO warning NASA to cancel the Starliner launch, quote, due to the risk of a disaster, unquote. The situation was played off by NASA and ULA, the launch vehicle provider, as if the CEO, Aaron Faville, was warning about the Atlas V. What if Ms. Faville was referring to the thrusters on Starliner, made by Aerojet Rocketdyne? There have been rumors of intercompany squabbles between Boeing and Aerojet for years, dating back to the sticky Starliner valves in 2021. The relationship was described as basically non-existent, each side pointing a finger at the other. I wonder if that carries through to today, as the companies are presumably working together closely as they study the thruster valve issues. Boeing is the poster child for what people call old space. They base their designs on the tried and true, spreading contracts and accountability far and wide to stimulate spending in as many congressional districts as possible to earn NASA and DoD contracts. In the early 2000s, new space companies such as Blue Origin, SpaceX, and Rocket Lab formed. These upstarts did things much more like a Silicon Valley startup. make everything in-house, start with a proof of concept, a minimum viable product, and iterate from there. This was a radical change from past practice that space gear must be designed in detail, on paper, or in a computer, with every detail scrutinized by layers of engineering and managerial oversight before production could begin. The very idea that SpaceX would weld its Starship rockets in a tent at the beach, almost unprotected from the elements, had old space types clutching pearls, and the old guard at NASA doubtful of the program's chances. A new space company like Rocket Lab designs the whole rocket and builds it from a component level up. New Space makes their own thrusters and engines. This takes longer than buying off the shelf, but with that time comes a deep understanding of the component and how to fix it. The stakes for Boeing and NASA have rarely been higher. Boeing is publicly confident they've done the right thing in testing to know the Starliner will return Butch and Suni safely. NASA now has to decide what to do. They have at least 3 options. If Starliner safely returns the flight test crew to Earth, everyone wins. NASA showed they were deliberate and followed the data, Boeing's approach is validated, and eventually Starliner can take its place in the crew rotation schedule at ISS. If Starliner successfully comes back uncrewed, Boeing will suffer reputational damage and incur more costs, on top of the $1.6 billion in losses Starliner has racked up so far. Then the nightmare scenario. A crewed Starliner fails to make it back safely. The fallout for NASA would be worse than the Shuttle Columbia disaster. If that were to happen after NASA deliberately studied the issue thoroughly and still made the wrong decision, the public outrage would be immense. For Boeing, it might be even worse. While they already have a tarnished reputation, they are a major supplier of the Space Launch System, which will take humans back to the moon. SLS is supported by influential members of Congress, but that program too is long delayed with ballooning costs. Wow, there is so much riding on this decision. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson will have the final call later this month. Let me know what you think. Should NASA send Butch and Suni back on Starliner, or let Starliner return empty? Thanks for watching. Please like this video and subscribe for more.